What if a harmless joke could cost someone their life? Anna never believed in curses, witches, magic. It was all silly superstition, something only naive villagers whispered about. So, when she dared her new crush to deliver her photo to the town witch, asking for a curse on herself just for fun, she thought it was a harmless prank. But the next day, her hands bled from a kitchen accident. Then a fishhook tore through her neck. And then, the man she was falling for was crushed, saving her from a collapsing rooftop. Now he's in a coma, and she knows this is no longer a game. Desperate, Anna turns to a mysterious old man, the village's white magician, only to discover the witch and the healer are not enemies. They're siblings, and they have a choice for her: save him and take his place, or let him die and walk away with her soul intact. But magic always demands payment, and Anna is about to learn that some debts go far beyond blood. Anna stood by Blake's hospital bed, frozen with indecision. The nurse, who was preparing his treatment, kept glancing at her with irritation. Anna's presence was clearly distracting, but Anna couldn't concentrate on the present. Her mind was trapped in the past, replaying one single wish: to turn back time. It had all started as a silly mistake. She had come to this small town to visit her friend, Sarah. Sarah introduced her to her group of friends. It was Anna's first time in the countryside, and she wanted to impress the locals. The guys immediately caught her attention, especially Blake. He was charming and gentlemanly. He offered her a drink and toasted to the birthday girl. After that, he kept her company with pleasant conversation and genuine warmth. Anna hadn't felt this comfortable with anyone in years. She'd always had trouble connecting with people, especially men. But with Blake, it felt like they'd known each other for ages. Suddenly, an old woman appeared from the trees and began scolding the group. Drinking and partying in broad daylight. No respect for elders, she said. As she walked off, she muttered curses under her breath. Anna was surprised. None of the group said anything in return. Instead, they began sharing stories about the woman, all painting her as a witch. One girl claimed the old lady cursed a pregnant woman who couldn't give birth for days. Another swore she bewitched men into alcoholism. Someone else said just the day before, every chicken on the other side of the village had died. She did it, no doubt about it. Anna couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Do they really believe this nonsense?" she asked. Sarah took offense. "You're from the city, you don't get it. Here, we all know better than to mess with her." That's when Anna decided to prove them wrong. She would show them how ridiculous all this superstition was. The next day, Anna came up with a test. She gave Blake a photo of herself and asked him to take it to the so-called witch and ask her to cast a curse on Anna. She wanted to prove nothing would happen. Blake, who had clearly developed feelings for her, tried to talk her out of it. But Anna stood her ground. She didn't believe in any of it. And if she didn't believe, what harm could it do? Blake, having grown up in that village, knew better. He believed in the old woman's power and feared what could happen. Still, he couldn't say no to Anna. When he brought the photo, the old woman took it silently. Blake made up a story. He said he wanted revenge on a girl who betrayed him. She listened carefully, nodded, and tucked the photo into her bag. Meanwhile, Anna travelled to a nearby village. She had learned that a so-called white magician named Grandpa Arlo lived there, and she wanted to test him too. Her plan was to tell him that someone had cursed her and ask him for protection. Anna wanted to see who was stronger, the black magic of the village witch or this white magician's defense. When she arrived, Arlo welcomed her into his wooden cabin. Before hearing her story, he poured her a glass of milk and asked her to drink it. Anna hesitated. Something about the gesture felt ritualistic. Still, she drank, then told him about her supposed curse and strange feelings lately. Arlo took the empty glass and examined the milk. At first he saw nothing and almost sent her home. But then he paused. His expression shifted. He asked her to leave behind a personal item, anything, and return the next day. Then he'd be able to tell who cursed her and why. The next day, Anna arrived early, filled with curiosity. She was excited. Would anything happen now? Would the magic work? Nothing did, at least not right away. Her friends organised a small picnic in her honour, and she laughed, relaxed, and felt triumphant. She had outsmarted them all. The witch, the village superstitions, the whole curse idea. But then it started, and she was slicing bread when her hand slipped, and she cut herself, badly. The knife had jerked strangely in her grip, as if something had tugged on it. Still, she brushed it off. It was just a cut. These things happened. Later that evening they all went fishing by the river. Anna sat quietly, a bit bored, waiting for something supernatural to happen. Then it did. One of the guys swung his fishing rod carelessly. The hook flew right into Anna's neck. The pain was immediate and searing. Everyone rushed to help. Blake was furious. He turned to her and snapped, "This is because of your little game. You brought this on yourself." Anna, stunned and bleeding, didn't argue. The next day, their group met again. Anna became the centre of attention. She laughed as she told the story of how she had fooled the witch and the white magician. But her friend Lindsay wasn't laughing. "You don't get it," she said. "You're not from here. You don't understand. That woman, she's not a joke. And now Blake's involved too." Blake, hurt and angry, turned his back on them. He had truly believed Anna liked him, but now it was clear she had just used him for a stupid game. Lindsay forced Anna to go find him. "He's probably gone to make things worse. You need to stop him." Anna chased after him. She didn't find Blake, but fate found her. A large piece of crumbling brick suddenly fell from a rooftop. Blake appeared out of nowhere and shoved her aside. The brick hit him full force. When Anna opened her eyes, he was unconscious, bleeding, barely breathing. She called an ambulance, then ran to Arlo's cabin, terrified. She finally understood. This wasn't a game anymore. Blake might die, and it would be her fault. When Anna arrived, Arlo was already waiting for her. She ran into his cabin, breathless and panicked. She begged him to help Blake, to save his life. She was willing to do anything, but Arlo didn't react the way she expected. He just poured her a glass of milk again and calmly handed it to her. Anna stared at the glass, trembling. "Don't you understand?" she shouted. "He's dying. This isn't about milk." Then, from the corner of the room, another figure stepped out. It was the old woman, the witch. The same one she had mocked. Anna froze. She never imagined the two would be in the same place, let alone allies. But they weren't just allies, they were family. The old woman was Arlo's sister. Anna's heart dropped. She felt exposed and powerless. She had mocked them both, and now they held Blake's life in their hands. She apologized, genuinely. She begged for forgiveness. The witch hissed with anger, spitting out every word like venom, but Arlo slammed his fist against the wall. Silence fell. He told Anna to follow him. They walked through the dark woods to a quiet lake. There, in the pale moonlight, the two old magicians began their ritual. They performed the ceremony over Anna, cleansing her with lake water, mixing her blood into a bowl of herbs and whispers. Anna obeyed every command. She didn't question anymore. The only thing she cared about now was Blake. At dawn, she awoke in Arlo's cabin again. Her head throbbed and her body ached. The old man stood in the doorway, holding a folded cloth, her scarf. He handed it to her and said, "Take this to the hospital. If you place it under Blake's pillow, he'll live. But it won't come free." Anna's breath caught. He continued, "If you do this, if you save him, you might take his place. The suffering, the pain, it might pass to you." Anna stared at the scarf in her trembling hands. She went to the hospital, stood at Blake's bedside. His face was pale, still. Machines beeped quietly around him. Anna hesitated. Could she do it? Could she risk her life to give his back? But deep down, she knew the answer. Yes. Slowly she placed the scarf under his pillow and whispered a quiet prayer. Whatever the price, she was willing to pay it. What if the man you loved was never who he said he was? What if the perfect relationship you trusted with all your heart was built on a lie? Irene thought she had it all, a loving partner, a future, a fairy tale. Until one night she found herself standing in front of his real life, his real house, his real wife. Betrayal is one thing, but when you're used, humiliated, and tossed aside like garbage, sometimes the pain doesn't break you. Sometimes it awakens something else. And in that moment, in that storm of heartbreak and rage, Irene made a decision. A choice that would change everything. Because some women cry over lost love. Others, they curse it. Today, Irene felt especially happy. She and William were celebrating 6 months since they met. To mark the occasion, she decided to use her position at work and asked her colleague Alice to give her a festive manicure. Noticing a book titled "Help Me" on Alice's desk, Irene was surprised. Alice quickly closed the book, explaining that she sometimes browsed through it for fun. As soon as William entered the salon, Irene forgot her question and rushed into her beloved's arms. They had met by chance at the salon. Irene couldn't believe her luck. Handsome, intelligent, wealthy and unmarried, a dream for any woman. The only thing that bothered Irene was William's constant busyness. Endless business trips prevented them from fully enjoying their time together. Therefore, Irene cherished every moment spent with him and secretly dreamed of marriage, hoping they could spend more time together. Upon seeing the jewellery, Irene could barely hide her disappointment. She had hoped to hear a proposal and finally become a bride, but William seemed in no hurry. After the restaurant, they, as usual, went to Irene's place where they could fully enjoy each other's company. Irene understood why William wasn't rushing to propose. She clearly didn't match him in social status. Therefore, she tried not to pressure her beloved. He was with her, and that was already happiness. Another phone call interrupted their dinner, and how she hated those calls. However, she knew that work came first for William and tried to be understanding about the urgent matters that regularly took away a piece of her happiness. After each such call, William would get ready and leave for work, and Irene didn't even try to stop him, knowing it was impossible. William promised to spend more time together tomorrow, but Irene knew that wasn't true. She never made any plans, only secretly continued to dream that someday he would decide to become her husband, and then they could always be together. Her dreams were interrupted by a call from Alice. Alice informed her that Irene had an urgent appointment. Irene worked as a hairdresser in a salon, and clients were satisfied with her work and often requested home visits. Such appointments brought in more money, and Irene tried not to refuse them, as she wanted to prove to William that she loved him not for his money, and tried to support herself. So, after noting the address, Irene quickly gathered her tools and headed to the client's place. Anyway, without William, the evening was ruined. She had never been to this neighbourhood before. Elite houses, security, checkpoints. She always admired such a lifestyle, but was also afraid of it. Looking at the client's house, Irene realised she could expect a good tip today. She was confident in her professionalism and knew she could please even the most demanding, wealthy clients. Years of working in the service industry had taught her to catch the slightest desires of clients. However, she was not greeted warmly here. The lady of the house didn't ask. She gave orders, and in such a tone as if Irene were her servant. Irene hated such pompous and overly self-confident women who lived off men and amounted to nothing in life. Unfortunately, they made up the majority of her clientele, so she gritted her teeth and got to work. She was doing a pedicure when the client began boasting to her friend about how wonderfully she and her husband had recently vacationed abroad. Irene became curious and inadvertently glanced at the family photo. Wikipedia +1, behind the name +1. It was a real shock for her. In the photograph she saw William. From the unexpected sight her hand trembled, and Irene hurt the client. The client, of course, didn't stay silent. Together with her friend, they began to insult Irene, calling her clumsy and accusing her of unprofessionalism. But Irene could think of nothing but William. She looked at the photo and tears welled up in her eyes. He was married. That's why he could rarely stay overnight. That's why he didn't bring up marriage. How could he not tell her that he had a wife? All these 6 months he had been deceiving not only her but also his wife. Although this woman evoked only strong antipathy in Irene, she constantly insulted her, humiliated her, and smeared her with dirt. It was clear that wealthy Angela considered people like Irene to be nothing. To her, a hairdresser was just a servant. Irene was shocked. How could William love such a woman? In the end, Angela made Irene clean up after herself and then finally deigned to pay for the work. Only then did Irene realize the most important thing. Angela knew everything. She had specifically called her to the house, deliberately mocked and humiliated her, knowing full well about their relationship with William. She even added at the end, "He will never be yours." Irene walked down the street, barely holding back tears. She had never experienced such offence and disappointment. How could he? She tried to call William to demand an explanation, but he kept declining the calls. As always, busy. Wikipedia +5, Wikipedia +5, Wiktionary +5. Irene had nothing left but to cry from despair and humiliation. Irene dreamed of revenge. No one had the right to mock her like that. She hadn't known that William was married. She would never have started an affair with another woman's husband. But he didn't care. He had simply wiped his feet on the girl, and Irene couldn't forgive that. Overcome by emotions, she didn't even give herself time to think and stop. Succumbing to an impulsive and uncontrollable urge, she grabbed Alice's book on magic from the table. Performing ritual actions, the girl experienced indescribable pleasure from every movement. In this way, she could release all the accumulated pain and resentment for the insults, broken hopes, and dreams. It seemed to her that the ritual would help ease her emotional pain and her own conscience. She drowned them in guilt. It was easier not to think about the consequences. The next morning, the girl woke up and was horrified by what she had done. Moreover, that strange dream had seriously frightened Irene. She was terrified to think that her actions could have actually harmed William's wife. Nevertheless, Irene had to go to work, as she felt very ashamed before Alice for her actions, for essentially stealing her book. However, Alice was concerned about something else entirely. "Look at this," she said, handing Irene a newspaper. Irene nearly fainted. On the front page she saw news of Angela's death. Irene's hands trembled with fear. She realized that this death was solely on her conscience. It was her ritual that had killed William's wife. She immediately dialed her beloved's number. She wanted to explain everything, to justify herself, but William didn't understand her. He apologized for not telling the truth and for deceiving her all this time, and informed her that he had loved his wife.